Hi, Sarah.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you very much. Thank you for being our first guest to the
Thanks for
Brave
having me.
podcast. We're really excited to have you. I'm particularly excited to have also a photographer on as our first guest, and I've met you before, haven't
Yeah,
I?
yeah. So a very funny way to meet actually at the first Brave talk that I went to. Got completely lost and stumbled upon you, also completely lost.
Totally lost.
Yeah,
Just two lost people wandering around. You had your camera on you, and came to me asking if I was going to the Brave talk. And that's how we connected, and we just went for a little wander, trying to find our way around.
yeah. I mean, it's quite a really nice full circle moment actually. Like the talk was super interesting. I was doing the photography for it. You were such a great conversationalist. Can't say I'm the best at speaking myself, so it's nice to have you moderating. Didn't think I would be sitting here a couple of weeks later, but here we are.
I'm sure we'll have a very insightful moment. Yeah, so resident photographer of Brave for 6 months, and
Yeah.
you met quite a few of the Brave artists, going to their studios, going to take photos of them, also portraits of them. Perhaps I see there's like a link there between the work that you've done as well. You were mentioning your book around tools, artist tools, but before that, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah. I'm Sarah Larby. I am now currently working as a freelance photographer, but my background is in fine art. So I did an undergraduate in Leeds a couple years ago, graduated in the COVID year, so in 2020. So went on a bit of a detour into the marketing world for a while, which was helpful in a way, but then ended up doing a master's in photography in the last year. And then my final project was around artists' studio spaces, their like tools they work with, and kind of culminated in a book that I made, a handmade edition of 5 of, which is just what you're referencing.
Yeah, a handmade edition, hand sewn. You were saying all pieced together by you, so you must have learned quite a bit on bookmaking, book binding.
Yeah, so my undergraduate kind of background, I started in painting and moved into sculpture. And then I think when I did the photography course, I really missed making things with my hands. And then the bookmaking part of things felt so natural with this project and its relation to craft that when I was like speaking with the bookmaking department and they were talking about how you hand sew everything, that it felt like the obvious choice for like the final kind of outcome of this project. But yeah, so it was all, you kind of like hand stitch each section and then stitch it together and glue a spine and put it all in a hardback book, and it's like a really long process. But when you're working with something like photography, I think having a long process is nice when the actual photography side is like more immediate.
Sure. And what were some of the tools that you used for that?
Well, a lot of PVA. I think that's what I actually really loved about it, is it's very simple, like paper, cloth, PVA, a needle and some thread.
What's PVA, sorry?
Like PVA glue.
Okay.
Just really basic materials. Like you think it's something that's going to be really complicated making a book, but it's really just like fundamental things that you could do at home.
Did you teach yourself?
So I did it whilst I was on my uni course, and they have like some incredible technicians who helped me. But it's the sort of thing that you could then do at home very easily, yeah.
And then the topic itself, I imagine when you have a final year project like that, you can go in all directions and you can go and explore anything you want. Why is it that you went to the studio?
Well, I kind of started the MA in photography thinking, I want to make this my career. I had a background in product photography, but when I was doing the course, everyone kept being really interested in my art undergraduate and being like, oh, but why are you making this photography really commercial thing when you have such like a fine art sensibility? That I knew for my final project I wanted to try and bring my fine art kind of side of my personality in my life, I guess, a bit more into my photography world. And then the most kind of obvious choice for that was to do something with artists, because it's a space that I'm quite familiar with, and it was also like a community of people that I knew would be really excited to collaborate. Yeah, that's kind of where it started from.
How did you feel when artists like would allow you into their space? Is there something that, you know, it's a very intimate space. It's where they, you know, they get creative and they spend a lot of hours, and it's sort of the behind the scenes. Was there a way that you would approach entering that space?
Yes and no. I think because it was a final project, I had such a limited amount of time that I was very much like, I need to be in and out and get this done. But I kind of had a system, so to speak, that I kind of put in place to help navigate working with people I hadn't met before.
Yeah.
So if you've seen the project, you'll know it's kind of, a lot of it is photographs of paintbrushes and things like that, photographed on like an isolated background, kind of removed from the studio space. So I did all of those photos in the artist's studio spaces, rather than at a photo studio. And my kind of process was I would do that first. And like that was a really easy way to get to know the artist, get to know their practice, be like, okay, what's your favorite paintbrush? Like, what's your process? What tools do you use? Or even just be like, what did you do today? How are you feeling about the photo shoot? Whilst doing some photos that are quite easy to just cycle through, and then taking the pictures of the spaces and the portraits is a lot easier after that, because it's less like, hey, I don't know you, I've just turned up in your space and now I'm going to take your photograph.
Of course. And you would know as well, because you've been working with tools as well, quite similar to theirs, possibly in paintbrushes, because so your background would have been as a painter, sculptor as well.
Yeah.
You went was it Poland?
Yes.
And you did a year out over there.
Yeah. So yeah, I started off my undergraduate being really interested in installation art in year one, in digital, mixed media, all that kind of stuff. And then that slowly migrated into just painting, which had been part of my installation kind of process. And then it slowly migrated into sculpture. And then once I kind of was like, oh, okay, sculpture has all the parts of installation and painting that I was like interested in, I decided to do a year abroad on my course in Warsaw in Poland. And that was studying traditional sculpture, specifically looking at like metal foundry work, ceramics, making larger scale works, and a lot more like on the physical process of making a sculpture. Whereas in the UK, I think the art teaching can be a lot more like conceptual, but yeah.
How was it to live out in Poland for a year?
Kind of crazy. Yeah, I knew I wanted to go somewhere not too far from home. I didn't want to stray outside of Europe, but I wanted to go somewhere where I didn't really know that much about the culture, or I hadn't been before. And just their way of working is very different. Like art school in the UK is so relaxed, and the timetables I find are so open, whereas I was going in like 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, was doing like 8 hours of life drawing a week, had about like 6 different classes, like all in very specific disciplines. Like one was in, I don't really know the English word, but it was making large scale sculptures. So I did that for about 50% of my week for 1 year, was just focused on making one sculpture that was life-sized.
What's it called in Polish?
It was called Studio 5 in Polish, and then it had a Polish word. But that was maybe like 6 years ago, and Polish is a different alphabet, so I have no idea how I would even pronounce that now.
Wow, that's amazing though. It's so great to also, you know, go to a new space, discover a new country, get exposed to all these new cultures and ways of doing, and find inspiration, really, I guess.
Yeah.
Did you feel that there? Because there's learning the skills, but then there's, you know, because you do have your own personal projects, as again today, I guess what I'm wondering is, and I always think of this, like, how do you get, Is it that you get an idea and you just go for it? Is it you get an idea and you rest on it? Or do you research it? Or do you start? How is it that you choose your own personal projects?
I always find like the topic of inspiration a really difficult one, because I think a lot of people make it seem like you have like an idea and all of a sudden you're like, aha, this is my idea and now I'm going to do that. But what I really liked about sculpture, and when I found my inspiration when I was making sculpture, was I would find my inspiration through doing. I find that the pressure of having an idea would stop me from making. So like to just experiment with materials, and whilst experimenting with the materials, then the idea comes. And I find with photography, it's a similar thing of kind of like being immersed in just my day-to-day life and my friends and the conversations I have, and then occasionally having my camera or being on a commercial job and taking some pictures and being like, oh, I really love these pictures. They're not right for this commercial job, but maybe that's an idea that I then want to explore. Or like chatting with a friend who, like for example, I've got a friend who's an aerial performer, and then being like, you know what, it'd be really great to take pictures with you. And then the first pictures I take with them aren't the final work, but then I look at those pictures and go, oh, that part of those pictures is really interesting. Let's focus on that and do it again. So I'd say my inspiration comes through doing, because if I like stopped, I wouldn't make, because there'd be too much pressure.
And I remember you saying that what's fun about photography is it's a medium where you don't actually need a studio. You're not quite constrained by that. You can just have the camera on you, and the world is your studio. I think is I'm quoting you in that.
Yeah.
Is that something? Do you go out a lot and just have your camera with you, or do you let things simmer into your mind? And
I think my desire to do photography as my career came from my frustration that sculpture took up too much space. And it's like this weird reflective thing. And I take my camera out with me a lot, but in a way it's a separate thing in my brain, because I take my like 35mm film camera, which is a much slower process out with me. There's something about taking my digital camera out that I don't do, because it feels like work. Like there's something about my digital camera that I feel like is reserved for like my commercial jobs, and like if I'm just out and about with my friends, I'll only ever have my film camera, because I can't really get obsessed over, oh, was that quite the perfect picture, because you can't see it.
Of course. How do you like working on the whole conversation around analog and digital? I mean, both are, I guess, you have a different relationship to both, right? One can be instantly looked at and have multiple, and you can research and test and sort of edit them in a way that is so much more instant than the analog.
I think I prefer analog, but I've like modified the way I work with digital photos to match my analog process. I think I mentioned to you before, when I edit my digital photos, I have to have a moment where I stop and I say, okay, I'm not going to look at this for 24, 48 hours, and then come back and look at it again, and then see, if the editing I've done is right, if I think I've selected the right pictures. And I think there's more of that distance with analog, which I think is really what I like about it. Is it's been so long since you took the photo that you can't really remember what you wanted the photo to be. You can only like see the photo for what it is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you almost become the viewer.
Yeah.
And you're the maker as well, but that time makes you just see it. And also, have you worked in dark rooms, and have you developed your own photo? Yeah, that's also a bit of, it's a magical room. It's a magical moment. And then you sort of view it as well in a certain way. There's also perhaps a sense of surrendering. There's that one. There's only that one, and it is what it is. Because I remember I was looking at one of your projects that you had done on, is it in nature? Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah.
Because I think there's part of the process, there was a crack and you decided to keep it in.
Yeah, so similar to the kind of like darkroom process, the project, it was titled Dear Earth, was looking at nature in London. And I went round with my film camera and took some black and white pictures of things that seemingly shouldn't be there. So weeds in between pavements. It was also in the winter months, so any kind of plants that were flourishing, even though it wasn't like spring or summer. And my idea was to kind of take these images and then in the dark room put them back onto like concrete or like some kind of material that was opposite to like a natural material, like something that felt really man-made.
You printed it on concrete?
So that was the initial plan. So there's this material called liquid.
There's a twist.
Yeah, there's a twist. There's a material called liquid emulsion, which is, or liquid light is kind of its street name, I guess, where you paint it onto anything. And as long as it's kept in the dark, you can then do the same process you would printing in the dark room with a negative onto paper, but onto any material that you've coated in that substance. What I didn't realise was trying to do that on concrete, because it's so absorbent, the solution didn't sit on the surface. So the image I was getting was not very smooth, and it would kind of sit in some places and fade in others. So it kind of came up with this process of transferring the image rather than like printing in the dark room. So just using acetone. I think everyone's almost done that I did it a lot when I was younger, when you like do print transfers, when you know you learn how to like iron a photo onto something or like transfer it with nail polish remover. So it was a really simple process, but we just put it through these rollers in the printmaking room, so that it transferred like every detail of the image. And whilst we put it through these rollers, the concrete tiles that I'd made cracked. And those are the cracks that you're referencing in. Just the pressure, just like pure pressure. So the decision was made, like, do we do less pressure, but we get like a more faded image that's not as clear, or do we just like keep going with the same amount of pressure in these rollers? And that's what we decided to do, and leave the cracks in, because it felt like it became part of the image, and then just re-photograph.
Yeah. Which makes me think of the was it Susan Sontag quote that you said, that you shared with me?
Yeah, so...
Do you have it? Do you know?
I do have it. So at the start of my artist book, I put it in the first page.
Oh, it was the first page. Oh,
yeah.
It makes so much sense.
That was,
again, it's so much about the process.
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of was the starting point. Before I'd come up with my idea, I guess if you want to say like there was one thing that was my inspiration for doing the artist series or looking at art and photography's relationship, it was this quote. But I can only see that now looking back. But the quote is, "The photograph in a book is obviously the image of an image, but since it is to begin with a smooth printed object, a photograph loses much less of its essential quality when reproduced in a book than a painting does." And I'm not sure I necessarily agree with the quote, but I just think it's an interesting point of discussion that paintings and sculptures and other art objects are inherently textured and physical things, whereas like a photograph is a kind of inherently digital flat object.
Therefore it would live in a book.
Yeah.
Perhaps better than a photograph of a sculpture or a painting.
Yeah, exactly.
What is it that you don't agree with? The scale?
I just don't know I think photography's history, if we're looking back at that, is like, I don't necessarily think a photograph is an inherently like flat object, because like historically it started out with film photography and like all the different ways that photography developed. It was such a physical process, and you would still have like a negative, or that, which was something physical. Like now, obviously, it's a digital thing. But I don't necessarily think that a photograph would print better than a painting would. I think it depends on the type of painting or the type of photograph, if that makes sense.
But you're so right. There is. I guess that's the comment to have around analog and digital. And again, digital is so easy to work with, but analog, you'd have part of that process, which is something you seem to have totally ingrained in you as an artist with the different disciplines that you did.
Yeah.
And I remember reading something about how when you worked on sculpture, it was through the making that you got inspired of what it sort of took you in places. Mm-hmm. So you seem to give a lot of space to the process, I guess. Yeah. And then you mentioned that as a child you were playing with different things. Did you have quite a creative, were you quite creative, or was it what's the word? Was it welcome?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, my dad was a sculptor. So when I was growing up, his career was a teacher, but he trained as a sculptor. And my mum loves art and would take me to she probably loved art more than my dad did, even though she didn't study it. She'd take me to all these art galleries and stuff, and I was constantly drawing and making and doing all sorts of things. For sure. I think that's pretty much all I did as a kid.
Really? So they're big supporters.
Yeah, massive supporters.
That's great.
Which is, really nice. It's sometimes, I think, not super common, but...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you share a lot with them, even about what you're working on today?
Yeah.
Is it a conversation that you would have?
Sometimes. I find that now that I'm a bit older, we have differing opinions, and more often than not, I'll share a work with my parents and be like, which picture out of these would you choose to print, because I'm really stuck? And they would say, oh, I'd choose the second picture. I'd be like, great, I'm going to choose the first one. I don't know. Sometimes I think it frustrates the hell out of my mum that I'll just pick the opposite of whatever she thinks. But they're a good sounding board.
I tend to do the same thing.
Yeah.
I think it's probably quite natural, and it's good. And would you go? You were talking about your group of friends, and you seem to have quite a cool, network of people around you. Would you turn to them as well?
Yeah. Quite a lot of my friends are in different disciplines, which is quite nice as well. I remember when I was making art, I would love to ask people who weren't in the art field what they thought about my work, because otherwise it feels sometimes like you're making in an echo chamber. And in the same way, when I'm doing photography, sometimes it's quite nice to get the opinion of one of my friends who's a set designer, or I don't know, is a writer, just
sure,
because
different
I think
perspective.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of the industry, you can end up all talking about the same things.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Cool. So from the pavements of London to the studio space to now, you're working also on aerial. What is it called?
I say aerial artists.
Aerial artists. Aerial performers.
Performers, circus performers. I guess I should really ask them. But yeah, what it means kind of specifically, or the one kind of niche that I've ended up looking at, is people who perform using silks, which are long cloths that hang to the floor and do loads of spins and twirls and stuff in the air, and hoops, which are also in the air, just a hoop hanging from a point in the ceiling. And it's all those kind of circus things that are done off the floor, because kind of what I'm interested in when I've been looking at that is the physicality it takes, but they're all kind of this dance and performance, so you're not really meant to see the strength and the effort that is required that goes
It's
into it.
always incredible, so smooth. It looks so easy, and obviously you try. You know, you can't even lift yourself up.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you get both feet off the floor and sort of be gracious? It requires so much strength.
Yeah.
But you had mentioned doing athletics as well. No, what was it? What did you do when you were a kid as a sport? Acrobat. No?
Gymnastics.
Gymnastics, the other one. So you could relate.
Yeah, I mean, I was never that good at gymnastics. I can relate to a certain point. I was just about as good as any other kid that did gymnastics. I was good enough and I enjoyed it. But it's just through having that one friend that I mentioned earlier who I've seen performing that I was like, that's really cool. Like, this would be really fun to photograph.
And challenging as well, though.
Yeah.
Because the movement.
Yeah, I've photographed her like 2 times now, and the first time was a complete fail. Like.
But you got back on.
Yeah, a big learning curve. I just had all the wrong equipment, and really needed to like rethink my approach to it. But yeah.
How did you experience that?
It was just going from, like I said, my background was kind of in marketing and product photography to photographing a person. It's just the scale of things is so different.
It's so different, yeah. So
like the lights I had that were my lights were just, I thought, you know what, they're a bit small, but I can kind of like make do with this. And then you realise sometimes with photography, in art, I feel like sometimes you can make do with stuff, but in photography, sometimes you just can't, and you need to rent that kit that's bigger and better to get what you want. And that was like the main sticking point.
This makes me think of something a bit more around, you managing budgets on different projects, whether it's commercial or your own personal projects. Yeah. Do you rent? Do you have all this material with you? How often? Also, there's a cycle at which, there's a bit of an upgrade that needs to happen. Mm-hmm. How do you manage that? Yeah,
well, I have like kind of core kit, I guess. Like I have my core camera and a couple of lenses and a flash. And that's pretty much like my basis. And I know that I could pretty much take that to like any sort of kind of like lifestyle kind of editorial shoot, and that would get me by. So for the kind of bread and butter work that I do, that I make my money for, that's enough. And then the way I kind of think of it is if I need bigger lights or something, that's going to be something that's outside the realm of what I normally do. So if it's for like a commercial client, that would be added on to the quote. And then if I need that for a personal project, then I'll rent it. But it is kind of a tricky one. I've kind of just got to think about what I'd use regularly enough to justify having it and what I wouldn't when it's actually going to be more beneficial to just rent it. Yeah, you've kind of got to add up in your head, like how many times am I going to use it? Am I going to make that money back? And then upgrading things is a tricky one. In theory, you should have that bedded into your pricing, which is why a lot of people can think freelancing contracts can be more expensive than if someone was to work in-house. But it's because they've got to factor in stuff like upgrades and insurance and all those kind of... Travel, yeah, expenses. Pension, which I'm not really thinking about right now, but at some point,
Yeah.
But yeah.
All the things that you don't see.
Yeah.
Aren't quite as obvious.
Exactly.
How long have you been freelancing for?
So I guess kind of I would say like seriously since November, so probably about half a year. Before then I was doing my master's course, but I started kind of freelancing a couple months before I started my master's. I left my marketing job and had about like 2 months of like trying to set myself up to freelance so that I could like use that money to support myself through my degree. So kind of unseriously or part-time, so to speak, probably about 2 years now.
Great.
Yeah, because the master's was a year and a half, so.
Right, so you started, then got into the master's, kept going, and then after the master's you're sort of full-time freelancing, and then you have your side projects.
Yeah, so I'm full-time freelancing, but I do still have a 2-day-a-week job in hospitality, just for that stability. But by kind of like professionally, I mean like I'm gung-hoing, going like, yeah, okay, I'm putting all my effort into my freelancing. I'm like chasing down sources. I'm trying to assist. Whereas before, when I was doing my degree, I was kind of letting stuff come to me. And
were things coming to you?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Which is quite lucky, I think.
How do you explain it?
It's through kind of like, through my marketing background, I've always kind of had that kind of analytical marketing kind of brain. And I knew when I was working in marketing that the people around me that I was working with, I kind of gathered up a list of contacts. I was working in the food and product photography industry, and I kind of made a list of people that once I left that job I could email and be like, hey, if you ever need any photography, or I photographed your products before, but I was working for this company. Here's an example of the photos I did if you want me to do something similar for you. So I did a bit of that before I started my master's. And then the art studio that I had a studio at, I also spoke with them and I photographed some of their workshops, and then some of the partners that they worked with then hired me. And then I kind of hit pause when I started my master's, and those kind of relationships I'd fostered in the couple months before then kind of carried me through for that master's course.
Do you feel like, because as I was listening to you, I was thinking it's quite rare to have in a space where your specialty now is photography, but you are also an artist, sculptor, photographer, multimedia artist.
Yeah.
And you can both do that commercially thanks to that medium, because there's such a need for photography, and do that as an art form as well. Mm-hmm. I don't know that would apply to sculpting, for example,
Yeah.
where you sort of dedicate all of it and then you know it goes off and has its own life. Does that undermine, in the eyes of some people, the medium that you chose now? Do you feel like it's...
I don't know.
Or how do you live with it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I mentioned when I started the masters, I saw photography really as like this commercial thing and as a job, and the fine art side of it was completely separate. But me being me, the more I did more photography, the more the fine art kind of thing crept in, because I'm unable to keep it separate. But I think that's what I really loved about photography, was its ability to be so commercial, but then also I can do something fine art based with it just because I want to. And
have a depth there that perhaps...
Yeah. And I think more than anything, from speaking with tutors and mentors and different people in the industry, in the photography industry, there's this sort of weird disconnect with the fine art world, where quite a lot of photographers I've spoken with don't really feel like they understand fine art, or they're not a part of the fine art world when they kind of would be seen to be from a fine artist or a painter. And I think there's this weird interest where people are like, oh, you did fine art, and they're really interested in it. I don't think it's a detriment to like the commercial side of things at all. And when I photographed artists, and I've introduced myself and I've talked to them, I've been like, oh, I'm a photographer. They're always like, no, you're an artist. And now I find it really hard to call myself an artist, and I say I'm a photographer rather than an artist. It's this whole weird thing with terminology.
Would you go back to painting and sculpting, or evolve into different mediums as well?
I don't know. I think it would be a separate thing. I think it would just be for me, the painting and the sculpting, rather than... I think like painting and sculpting were kind of like my first love, and photography my second. But I think that's why I'm able to do it as a commercial thing, is because I've got a tiny bit more distance from it. Like, it doesn't feel as personal. Yeah. Which is why I think I fell out of love with sculpting and stuff, is because of the space it would take up, and because it was trying so hard for it to be a commercial thing, and I didn't really want it to be.
But it sounds like art would always be a constant for you? Have you ever
Yeah.
questioned whether you would go in a different direction, not have it as part of it? No,
No,
it's not an option.
My only sort of, I guess, kind of daydream is, you know, if everything were to go wrong, maybe I'd do like carpentry, you know. But that's still an art thing, I think. I think I just like making things, and that will be a constant, no matter what medium I do it in.
Yeah. And these are things that take time, that require also a certain energy. If you make things with your hands, that's also, you know, going out there in the world is certainly something. To photograph it is certainly something that must fill you up as well. But I always wonder, how do you manage your sort of energy levels between having a job and then your projects and then life happens as well?
I think I burnt out after my undergraduate, for sure. When I was doing sculpture and stuff, I got an art studio, I had a full-time job, I was making in the evenings, the weekends, like I gave myself absolutely zero breaks. And I think I really learned from that and have just been like, okay, because my schedule is so flexible, I have to look at each week and go, okay, this is going to be a day off. And
you choose a day off, you set yourself to a day off every week.
At least one day off. Like sometimes two, but one is the minimum. Yeah, and I have to do that each week.
Weekends included?
Yeah. No, so sometimes I work weekends because of the nature of my schedule. So when I first started freelancing, I would finish a week and be like, oh my God, I haven't had a day off that week. So now it's like, okay, I don't want to burn out again. So start of each week, this is going to be my day off.
Yes.
And I am really rigid about that. Whereas before, I think I would have just worked that day because I'd been like, oh, it's a free day, and it's not really work, you know, it's something I enjoy, so I'm going to do it. But then I think you do sort of like use up all your creative energy in a way.
How did you feel the burnout with that? I mean, it must have affected a lot your creative energy, as you say.
Yeah, I just never want things to start to feel like a chore again. So I think like going through that experience of falling out of love with sculpture and painting because I just worked so hard at it has made me realise like, okay, I need to take breaks, otherwise you're going to end up like in that really burnt out position again, which is why like now I can say, oh, I can see myself doing sculpture and stuff again because I've taken a break from it. But you can't do the thing you love all the time, even though you think it'll be okay, because you like, well, me personally, I just ran out of energy.
Sure. Is there something that you would have seen with other art student friends, like I don't know that we talk about it enough.
Yeah. I think like there's this like weird kind of thing that I mentioned, like if it's something you love and it's your passion, and like you should just do it when you can do it and whenever you have the time.
Don't count the hours, you just go for it.
Yeah, it's like, it's not a job, you know, and I think that's like really the wrong way of looking at it, because a lot of art is made from your time off, like going out with friends, and people are inspired by different things, like living your life. And if you stop living your life and you're just making art, like what are you being inspired by? You have no time to be inspired. You're just isolated in the studio all the time.
Of course.
Basically, the highest paying commercial jobs are when any brand wants to own the copyright, and then that just comes with like a massive fee. And then photographers.
But it's the quantity as well, right?
If you quantity, yeah. And then it's a trap that a lot of younger photographers fall into as well, though. Like sometimes you're like, I've done jobs where they ask to own the copyright, and when you're a younger photographer, you don't really know that you should never give away your copyright unless you're getting a lot of money.
How do you quantify how much giving away your copyright should be worth?
There's like resources online, like Association of Photography. There's a great group called Dark Light that you can message on their forum, asking other people. But I don't know off the top of my head, but at least double your photography fee to own copyright, if not a lot more. yeah, there's this whole kind of section of photography about like licensing and copyright, and you know, if someone wants to put your work on a billboard, that you should charge them a licensing fee instead of if they were to just use it on a website, which is a different thing.
Do you have a view of that? Do you know on what sort of support your photographs will exist? Or
Yeah, well, it's the kind of thing that I try and ask at the start of each
and that's where your marketing hat comes in
yeah,
to play
project.
as well. Yeah.
But it's kind of like one of those things that I feel like a lot of photographers just learn by doing, and then they talk to their community, and every photographer will have a story where it'll be like, oh, I did this thing that was like on all these bus stops and I got paid like 50 quid for it, and then you're like, oh, like every photographer's got a story.
Have you had something like that happen to you?
Yeah, I did a thing that went on loads of bus stops.
Speaking from experience, that must be quite something.
Yeah, it was cool though. I don't.
Did you take a photo of you next to me and be
I
like,
did.
Did you?
Yeah,
Amazing.
I did take a picture of me
Amazing.
next to a bus stop. It wasn't for 50 quid, but it definitely wasn't me charging my worth. But that is the most difficult thing to navigate as a freelance photographer, I think.
And then I was just thinking then, do you use like Instagram as almost your work? How do you navigate Instagram? How do you use it? Because do you really divide there as well?
Yeah, I mean, I had one person I spoke to who gave me some really good advice, which was your website is for looking in depth at projects. So like have a small selection on there, but you know, like a really in-depth view. So if a client wanted to hire you for one specific thing, they can click on a project and be like, okay, this is the scope of all the images we get in a project. This is like a breadth across one area. Whereas your Instagram, you can show like work in progress or just one random image that you took on a Thursday, and it can be much more of like a quick visual snapshot / portfolio.
Do you ever show photos of you, your life, your inspirations, your travels?
I did.
Your breakfast?
And then I decided that I didn't like it on Instagram.
Sure.
Just visually. But yeah, I think it's that thing of like work and life balance. A little bit on my stories sometimes, but trying and keep the grid looking like a portfolio.
Sure. Just a small parenthesis. It's interesting when I, in my final year, I did a thesis on, I was studying history of art, and I chose to do it on photography and how, on a specific photographer called Amelia Stein, who's an Irish photographer, who was the first photographer member of the Royal Hibernian Academy, which is the RA equivalent, but in Ireland.
Yeah.
And how photography entering a traditional institution was a transition towards modernism. So it was a lot around, the study of photography. So obviously read Sontag and Berger, Berger, I don't know how we say his name, who we mentioned earlier. And I find it interesting because there is still, to this day, always going to be a commentary around, photography, sculpture, art, and art and painting, and then there's also architecture and design. How is it in the institutions today where you went, where you studied your BA, your MA? How did you feel like the teachers were approaching that? And was it very open in mixing the different media, or did you feel like there was still a bit of a traditional, old school, perhaps even, way of categorizing? I
think on my course, I was very surprised. My course the title was commercial photography, and I thought it was going to be very orientated just towards that kind of business, kind of traditional side of things. But a lot of the tutors' focus was on personal projects, and it was like your personal projects are the things that you want to be making, so you should be doing them and adding them to your portfolio. The more personal work you do, the more jobs you're going to get aligned with the work you want to be making. I think what they didn't realize is like this idea of personal projects is quite an art-based thing. I think it's very rooted in the way that people work in an art school. It did have that art school feel. I mean, it is the University of Arts in London, but I think there is a lot of interest in mixing the mediums. There wasn't any sort of hierarchy or anything like that.
Sure, great.
Yeah, which was really helpful. If anything, I had that sort of hierarchy in my head of photography is like this commercial job thing, and there's not really like the fine art side of it when I started the course, and then after the course I kind of broke that down. The main kind of topic of discussion in the minute is just AI. It's just...
What about it?
AI and photography, and in the commercial world, can you use an AI picture to sell things? What it means for copyright, but just kind of like the uproar of it doesn't mean photography, there isn't going to be a job in it, and all that kind of stuff.
Possibly it would give even more space to the fine art.
Yeah, argument. I think I heard something recently or read something, and I can't remember where it was from, but it was saying how, in theory, I think John Berger, who we just mentioned, talks about how like an image is never actually real. Like we perceive a photograph to be this very real documentation of something that's happened, but it's a singular moment outside of its context, and
it's a prism.
Yeah.
Prism of it's a viewpoint essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And if anything, we've fallen into this thing where now we believe like a photograph to be real. And this person that I think it was on a podcast was saying like, if anything, AI is quite interesting because now it's brought back that conversation of, oh, is that picture real?
So you would, as a viewer, everything you would see, you would almost challenge.
Yeah. Which I think...
opens the space, really.
Yeah, opens the space. I think a lot of photographers are frustrated with it because they're getting questions like, oh, is your picture real?
Sure, they're challenged.
Yeah, but if anything, I think that's quite an interesting thing because there are photographers out there who've like tried to make images look like surreal or used editing before. And it's a similar kind of wheelhouse, I think. It's a tool like editing, like when people would cut images up and collage them together. But I don't think it's a replacement. But the idea of the real is something that I think is the most interesting conversation I've heard about AI and photography's relationship.
Have you tried some? Have you played with it?
I have, yeah. I'm not very good at the prompts. I don't think it's a tool I'll necessarily use myself yet, but I know there are some quite interesting photographers that are doing really exciting things with it.
I've seen some things, and I mean, when you think of the cost of production, that's, totally, you see these things that would be either impossible to do in real life or would cost so much to put things together with the set and the actor or the model, the technicalities behind it. It is pretty impressive, and it's true. I think the viewer will be challenged and yeah. I mean, it's going to disrupt the industry in a certain way, and every aspect of it as well. Everything that happens behind the camera. Yeah. Do you like the vibe on a set?
Yeah,
I think something that you...
Yeah, I think working as a photographer is quite a collaborative thing. Like on the bigger sets, I've kind of been on bigger sets mainly as an assistant. But like, you've got an assistant, you've got a set designer, a stylist, you've got the talent, the actual photographer, and everyone has like their own slight idea on how they want things to go, what direction they want to go in, and like navigating that and coming together in like a big collaboration is really exciting to watch. And like even working on a small scale, like working with photographing someone is also a collaboration. I think I really value that in photography, that it's about community, a lot of it.
Yeah. What can I wish you for the next few, what are your future projects that are, or where do you see yourself?
I want to make more books and physical things. I'm enjoying making work, but it would be great to like have an exhibition or print things, or have like some of the work I've done this year live outside of my computer. And also just like, it's great when you get a client come in, like someone out of the blue, and it's just like a really interesting project, and you just get an email and you're like, oh, I really want to work on this.
Yeah.
So just more of that. Slow and steady.
Slow and steady.
Yeah.
Slow and steady. It's a recurring theme. Will you be taking your camera to Thailand?
Yeah, I think so. Trying to work out the logistics of it, because I want to take my film camera. Like I mentioned, I don't like taking my digital because it feels too much like work. But film scanners and film and X-rays at airports don't go hand in hand, because it can degrade the film. And
yeah, but if you put them in the little
plastic canisters.
Yeah.
Technically that doesn't massively help, especially if it's the newer X-ray scanners, which are more powerful. But it depends on the ISO of the film and various things. But because it's just personal, like kind of pictures, I think it would probably be fine.
One thing to ask ChatGPT or any other AI.
Yeah.
I'm sure other photographers have been traveling, abroad and been through that question. Really cool. Well, thank you for coming from behind the camera and onto the mic.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And yeah, looking forward to seeing the books, which I'm a huge fan of accumulating books, and especially photography books.
Yeah,
It's
they're a
very exciting.
beautiful art object, I think, photography.
Cool. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.